This video is sponsored by established titles. Marvel's Black Panther Wakanda Forever is now in wide release worldwide, and as expected, it is off to a strong start at the box office, looking to open in the $180 million range domestically. Which is impressive to be sure, though a downgrade from the more than 200 million analysts were predicting it would open to up until very recently. How it will continue to play from here depends on the audience and word of mouth. Another movie which opened below initial projections, and far more so than Wakanda Forever, was DC's Black Adam, which opened to a mere 67 million. In fact, Wakanda Forever's opening weekend rivals what Black Adam has grossed domestically so far. There are no two ways about it. Black Adam is a financial disappointment. But there is nonetheless a silver lining. While it kind of bombed in its opening weekend, something which can be attributed to the marketing and the public confidence in the DC brand, or rather, lack thereof. The audiences that actually did go see Black Adam gave it great word of mouth. Relative to its lackluster opening, Black Adam has overperformed ever since, with exceedingly good box office holds, and that is entirely down to the audience reaction to the movie itself. Nowhere is this visualized better than on Rotten Tomatoes. What is more, there is no discernible difference between the general audience and verified audience scores, which suggests there hasn't been any kind of tampering or other fortification in Rotten Tomatoes' end, which isn't true for all movies. In short, while the critics hated it, the audience responded strongly to Black Adam, which you would think is a good foundation to build upon for future movies. But not everyone thinks so. Some voices in the establishment media complex think audience approval that hasn't been approved by the critics, as it were, is deeply problematic. One such voice is that of CBR. In this editorial, I will go through one of the most mind-boggling articles of the year, namely one which argues why audience approval is bad. Of course, we'll explore the flaw with this line of thinking and see how DC might now be better positioned going forwards than Marvel. The CBR article, titled "Black Adam's fan reception is problematic for the DCU's future," has the byline, "With critics panning Black Adam, but audiences adoring the film, Warner could be duped into thinking it's the formula to move forward. So brace yourself for a crap take." It starts innocently enough though, with when the critics began revealing their takes on Black Adam, many wondered if DC had churned out another bomb, which is true. Leading up to its release, amidst rumors that Black Adam test screenings had gone no better than test screenings for the cancelled Batgirl, everyone, and I mean everyone, expected the movie to be a disaster. Against this backdrop, I had the fortune of attending one of the first public screenings of the movie in the world, and when I gave my verdict on a live stream, the clip of which you can find over at Mr. H Reviews live archives, my peers couldn't believe what they heard.
My overall thoughts on Black Adam is, I liked it. Hell, I loved it.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Oh wow, okay.
It was awesome. It's the best superhero movie this year.
Did you dip into any of that?
That's not
of that wine that you're drinking?
Wait a minute. What about Morbius?
Andre, are you sober?
All the time.
Are you sober?
But as it turned out, I was far from the only one to feel that way. Acknowledging this, the article reads, "It paints an interesting dichotomy, with Rotten Tomatoes' critical score at 39%, but the audience's at 90%, indicating fans love Dwayne Johnson's anti-hero. However, while the movie's success is great, viewers receiving the film so well isn't good for the DC universe moving forward long term." Let's read that final part one more time. Viewers receiving the film so well isn't good for the DC universe moving forward long term.
What the fuck does that even mean?
Alright, it should be interesting to see how they reached that conclusion. The article reads, yes, fans love Johnson and his WWE time as The Rock, but still, the outpouring of love can backfire due to the movie's many flaws. Now, fans are entitled to their opinions, but Black Adam isn't that good of a film. The plot is rushed, the dialogue is lacking, and it relies heavily on the typical CGI-laced finale that flopped for Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and Batman v Superman, to name a few. In that sense, it has a lot of the same technical and narrative errors from the older movies, which the DCU has been trying to move away from. But should Warner gauge this reception as an acceptable standard, all the progress could be walked back. Progress? Which progress? Unless it was made by James Gunn or starred Joaquin Phoenix, I'd argue there hasn't really been any progress for DC films between Snyder and Black Adam. I mean, between the two is where we find the ultra-woke Hamada regime disasters Wonder Woman 84 and Birds of Prey, which audiences absolutely hated, even though the critics were pretty okay with them. Or could that be what CBR means? Let's read on. In the Zack Snyder era, the filmverse was wobbly, which is why mediocre content thereafter was heralded as a step up. Yeah, I did feel Aquaman was praised a tad too much, but that's not what they're referring to. Even Wonder Woman 84 is viewed as palpable, despite all its mistakes and a creepy Steve Trevor resurrection arc, because what came before was so bad. Oh really now, CBR thinks Wonder Woman 84 is viewed as palpable. It may be by the professional establishment critics, even more so at the time of release than now, but hardly by anyone else. So that is what we are presented with here, the completely out-of-touch establishment critic point of view. CBR could have gifted us with an example or two of this alleged progress, but no such luck. We're about to find out why the establishment is so afraid of movies being approved by the audience and not them. But before that, and on the topic of gifts, I have an idea for you. Thanksgiving is coming up, and when you're going for dinner, what are you going to bring the host? That fruitcake that nobody eats? Or are you going to become the light of the party by giving your host a lordship? Because you can do that. Established Titles, this video sponsored, is a project based around a historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds, or lords and ladies in English. Through Established Titles, you can be the owner of at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, which by Scottish tradition makes you a lord or lady, and you'll get an official certificate with a crest to prove it, such as the one I have right here. This certificate features a unique plot number with which you can see the exact location of your land. In places where prefixes are allowed in official documents, you might even be able to replace Mr. or Miss with Lord and Lady. Now obviously, this is a fun novelty, but it makes for a great gift, and novelty aside, there's a very real benefit to it. To support worldwide reforestation efforts, Established Titles work with global charities One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future, so for every order, a tree will be planted. Established Titles is running an early Black Friday sale right now, and if you use our code MIDNIGHT, you get an additional 10% off. Also, Established Titles told me that the first 200 people buying a title pack using our link will effectively be next to my plot, within a few minutes of walking distance. Depending on how many of you want to become a lord or a lady, we can build our little Midnight's Edge kingdom. Go to establishedtitles.com/midnight to get your titles now, link is in the description. With that, let's get back to why the entertainment media establishment is so afraid of audience approval that wasn't pre-approved by them. The article continues, but now with Black Adam being seen as a moneymaker. Is it? That's new to me. But moving on. DC movies with weird plot holes, such as Hawkman not asking for Adam's help against Sabbac, odd characterizations, such as Waller not killing a human Adam, and motivations, as seen with a randomly existing intergang. And that need to stick in a ton of fights, style over substance, may become the norm again. I'll comment on that, but first, let's continue with just how out of touch CBR appears to be, not just with audiences, but with what is actually happening behind the scenes at Warner. Right now, Black Adam is just papering cracks, bandaging old wounds, and applying a hopeful creative treatment rather than being an assured decisive cure. Winging it like this shouldn't be a template for success, nor a measuring stick the studios goes by, which may well become the case the more the box office haul grows. The article eventually concludes with, Black Adam can lull Warners into a false sense of security due to the market. The thirst for anything DC, and admittedly Marvel saturation. Oh, we're admitting that, are we? coupled with an audience that's trying to move away from the coof and back into theaters, will result in folks flocking to a popcorn movie that's steeped in senseless violence and laughs, but ultimately, it's not the formula for a compelling, nuanced superhero verse. And there we have it. The audience had a great time, but it wasn't what the establishment media complex considered to be compelling or nuanced. Of course, that leaves me wondering, where was this particular criticism for Wonder Woman 84? Where was it for Birds of Prey? Because the people behind those movies were the ones winging it, yet the establishment media didn't have any such issue with either of them upon release. And for all the flaws here pointed to in Black Adam, some of which I'm not defending by the way, I can point to far more egregious offenses in both of those that outlets like CBR let slide. But a movie that is sheer joy and entertainment, with little nuance beyond that, has to be called out. In essence then, this is CBR's way of saying they think the audience are plebs and hillbilly hicks for liking Black Adam. And that Warner potentially are worse, because there's a real risk they might decide that Black Adam is as good as they need to aspire to. You know, the studio that hired freaking James Gunn to helm their DC operation a good week and a half before this article was published. Also, they are ignoring something major here. The thing to keep in mind about Black Adam is that it was filmed under the previous Walter Hamada regime, which in reality was the Jan Sarnoff and Toby Emmerich regime. Hamada did little more than execute their will. But because of that, the movie obviously carried some of their fingerprints. Some wokeness, if you will, both in casting, but far more importantly, on-screen messaging, did creep into the picture. But then David Zaslav came aboard. He retooled the movie, elevating the action, and from what I heard, cut out all of the messaging. Keep in mind, Wonder Woman 84 had a running time of 2.5 hours, and from what I understand from my sources, the original running time for Black Adam was closer to that of Wonder Woman 84. That is the version of the movie the trailers were advertising, and who knows, maybe CBR would have preferred that cut. But under Zaslav, in the final months and weeks before release, the ideopolitical preaching and other bloat was cut. And the fan-favorite Superman cameo was greenlit and filmed, despite Hamada's best efforts to stop it. In the end, a comparatively lean and no longer preachy 2-hour and change crowd pleaser was released into theaters. That doesn't mean it perfectly reflects the future of DC, as this was a salvage from the previous regime, but it does mean the current regime puts entertainment first. To wit, they hired James Gunn. One of the most imaginative, creative filmmakers working today is James Gunn. You wanna know why Phase 4 of the MCU is so bad? Well, there are several reasons, but a major one is that Alan Horn, on a whim, without consulting with either Bob Iger or Kevin Feige, fired James Gunn. Phase 4 was supposed to be kicked off by Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3 and go increasingly cosmic, under an architecture provided by James Gunn. But all of that went out the window with his ill-advised firing. Before Disney could undo the situation, Warner had already swooped in and hired Gunn for the Suicide Squad. That failed at the box office for a variety of reasons, but Peacemaker showed everyone that this is the guy to run DC, and now that he will, Marvel better watch out. DC movies are about to get a whole lot more fun, a whole lot more edgy, and filled with nuance and substance that Marvel and their current set of writers and producers can only dream about. Articles like this one from CBR will not age well. It is the goodwill of the audience that determines the future success of a brand, and in that regard, DC are catching up fast. And on that note, with Black Adam and Black Panther Wakanda Forever now both out and released, which brand are you more excited for going forward, DC or Marvel? Let me know in the comments, and before you go, remember that Established Titles is running a big sale right now, and if you use the code MIDNIGHT, you get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/midnight now, link is in the description.